The opening of the clubhouse by Port Stephens Shire President John Bartlett marks completion of Stage 2 of the Horizons Master Plan, which was kicked off last December with the launch of the 18-hole course. The number of golfers using the course has steadily increased to more than 400 a week, with around half of those from Sydney.
Many golfers in Sydney cannot get onto golf courses, and besides us being such a quality course, it is worth their while to drive from Sydney, and we're a comfortable drive away now.
The potential economic boost is welcomed by Councillor Bartlett.
If tourism is going to be the lifeblood of the Shire, which many of us think that it will be, in terms of employment for our young and employment for the people that are here now, it's got to be the way to go. These sorts of developments are what Port Stephens is looking for. If we want to keep the port as beautiful as it is, as green as it is.
The next stage of the development is the construction of villas and condominiums on and around the course. This should start in the near future. In a fitting finale to today's opening, business and media identities tested the offerings both off and on the course. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
It sounds complicated, doesn't it? Well, to most of us lay people, it is. You only have to look at the conference handbook to become confused. Plenty of technical jargon and theories, which to most of us mean very little, but are vitally important to those attending the conference here at the Newcastle Workers Club. Many are academics, but there are also representatives from the Bureau of Meteorology, the Department of Water Resources, the Public Works Department and other government and private bodies which work directly with water.
Contrary to what some people believe, engineers don't know everything, and many of us are still researching a whole range of issues, and some of us are ahead of others in various areas, and so this kind of interchange is important in all kinds of research activities.
A variety of topics are being covered, too many to mention, but this will give you some idea.
It's a very broad range of issues. We cover salinity, we cover greenhouse effects, climatic change, and this whole range of water quality and water supply problems.
This label has been in bottle shops and restaurants for more than 12 months, but for all that time, McGuigan Brothers has been a wine without a home. That's changed today. The new financial year has brought a new cellar sales outlet for the former prime movers of Wyndham Estate, with the company opening its doors in the heart of the Becolban vineyards.
With a home, it'll be much better for us to show people where the wines are made, to really control our own destiny in our own winery.
While the cellar sales room is aimed at enticing passing trade, McGuigan Brothers is also looking at the enormous United States market. After a recent trip by Brian and Faye McGuigan to the US, the company is confident of exporting 55,000 cases of wine to North America this financial year.
The Americans love Australians. There's a great affinity between Americans and Australians. They love our wine, and having Brian and Faye over there really will give us a great thrust in the US.
While there were plenty of toasts to the future today, there was also some yarning about the past. In the Hunter Vineyards, the name McGuigan is as old as this truck, half a century, and Father Purse was on hand to taste the fruits of his boy's labour.
I feel that they will do very well, and it's very good, as I said, to see them starting out on their own.
Scott Bevan, NBN News. For all of its 196 years, Newcastle's fortunes have been tied to the sea, and the men who have helped load and unload the products that brought wealth to the Hunter today celebrated a major change in their long history. Gone are the Waterside Workers Federation and the Seamen's Union. In their place stands a new amalgamated entity called the Maritime Union of Australia. And at the Newcastle Workers Club, 500 members, past and present, sealed that bond with a beer and some tall tales and true.
We're very proud of our working class origins, and we're very proud of our traditional working class spirit, and we're here to celebrate that.
Jim Boyle says the union changes are designed to keep pace with the massive reforms that have swept waterfronts around Australia. Meanwhile, another change on the harbour was announced today, this time affecting the companies that unload ships. A new company called Australian Stevedores has been created from the merging of National Terminals Australia Limited and Strang Patrick Stevedoring, which has an office in Newcastle with a staff of almost 40. Levels underway, which means there's no job guarantees. But for the moment, he says the merger means business as usual for Newcastle. Scott Bevan, NBN News.
Jack Beattie was in dynamic form early in the day. The semi-final was a battle of the left-handers, Adam Gleeson from Waratah showing experience beyond his years. Although Gleeson was 10 shots behind, he kept up the pressure, making sure Beattie worked hard to get through. His job was made somewhat easier by the great condition of the Alder Park greens. Beattie will now team up with other members from Katawa to try and claim the district triples titles later this year.
Barry Arthur attended a party here in Arana Avenue, Adamstown Heights on Friday night. Police say he was drinking heavily. He was last seen 4:30 Saturday morning. Today his family and friends were helping police and SES members search the Adamstown Heights area. Police believe he may have tried to walk home to Blacksmiths using the disused Belmont rail line. They know he was in nearby Westwood Avenue sometime on Saturday morning as his jeans and boots were found on the veranda of this house. A pair of underpants was also discovered. Police say Barry had no money on him as his wallet and keys were in the pocket of his jeans. With most of his clothing handed in, police don't believe Barry would have gotten far. All he was wearing was an aqua-coloured corduroy jacket and probably a shirt.
Apparently, from information from relatives and friends, when he does have a few beers occasionally, he might just go for a walk for himself, but he always comes back in an hour or so.
Police used sniffer dogs to search the area last night. For his family, it's an anxious wait.
Up till dark, we was right up through the tunnel and over the banks and all of that, and then first thing this morning I've worked all the way back from the train line back to here and no sign.
Barry is described as 175 centimetres tall and of slim to medium build. He has light red hair, which is in tight ringlets. Anyone who saw Barry early Saturday morning should contact Hamilton Police. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
The Armidale unit began training in January. Already, more than 30 cadets have signed up. Commanding Officer Max Taverner says it's a chance for young people to get a taste of Navy life.
It gives the opportunity for young girls and boys within the community between the ages of 13 and 18 the opportunity to join a military-run and controlled organisation.
In keeping with those traditions, the cadets staged a parade complete with a full inspection as part of the commissioning ceremony. Lieutenant Taverner believes it's activities like this that help strengthen the cadets' day-to-day living skills.
It helps develop their confidence, their self-esteem, and we always strive to try and make them a better person.
According to the Lieutenant, there's also a chance for the cadets to travel.
They have the opportunity to meet a lot of cadets their own age right along the New South Wales coast. They get the opportunity to go to Sydney and do a week's training where they'll go on ships, submarines, do sailing activities on the harbour.
Late this afternoon, police were setting up lights as the standoff continued. Just after 10:30 this morning, a 19-year-old man allegedly took a woman aged in her 40s hostage in a Macquarie Road house.
Following a series of offences, she escaped. The information is that 2 shots were fired.
The woman who'd been assaulted managed to escape from the house and found refuge a few doors away. She was treated by ambulance officers and taken to Gosford Hospital under sedation to be treated for shock. The area was quickly cordoned off. A police launch patrolled offshore, warning other vessels away from the possible line of fire. The heavily armed Tactical Response Group took up position. Relatives of the man involved were assisting police from a command post set up in the neighbourhood. A police negotiator was called from Sydney in an attempt to make contact with the gunman. Little is yet known of the man's motives, but it's believed he's a local to the area. Andrew Lobb reporting, NBN News.
Yesterday, police searched an area extending from Adamstown Heights to Redhead, but found no sign of 31-year-old Barry Arthur. Today, they were door-knocking residents where he disappeared. Barry Arthur attended a party in Arana Crescent, Adamstown Heights on Friday night, where he consumed a copious quantity of alcohol. He was last seen at about 4 o'clock Saturday morning. Later that day, the owners of this Tremont Avenue house found his jeans, underpants and boots on their veranda. After a report on NBN News last night, police are following a number of leads, but they would like more help. In particular, they would like to speak to the driver of a car who may have been in Tremont Avenue at around 4:30 Saturday morning. People have told police they heard tyres screeching at that time. Residents here in Garden Grove Parade also reported seeing a man fitting Barry Arthur's description between 6 and 7 Saturday morning. He had what they described as stringy hair and a blue beach towel wrapped around his waist. Mr. Arthur may have been trying to make his way to Brunker or City Road. He had no money as his wallet was left in his jeans. Police are concerned for his safety because it's now been 4 days since he was seen. Hamilton police are handling the case.
John Kosmina is an Australian soccer legend, playing more than 100 matches for his country. He believes learning the basics of the game is important to the development of young players, and he's only too happy to pass tips on to the youngsters.
The important thing for kids, I think, is to just basically work at simple things like juggling and simple passing techniques. And coaches should do the same thing with kids as well, certainly up to the age of about 13 or 14.
John, along with a dozen other coaches, has spent the last 2 days working with children aged between 6 and 14 at a clinic in the Hunter Valley. With more than 300 taking part, organisers are thrilled with this year's turnout.
Overwhelmed. I told people on Monday we had 105 kids coming. I'm going to say it's ended up closing at 371. It's blown us away.
Still on soccer, the second of the State of Origin series between New South Wales and Queensland kicks off on Friday night at Newcastle's Mitre 10 Stadium. Some of the players were in Newcastle today and are predicting a hard-fought clash.
I think we've been for a fairly tough encounter, but we've got a lot of young guys, and if they can lift their performance again, I think we'll be able to match them.
Are they pretty determined, your guys? I mean, obviously New South Wales appears to get the rails run in most sports. They think. Simon O'Donnell has been sidelined for the past few weeks after breaking a bone connected to his thumb. His hand will be strapped, but the pain has subsided enough for him to play. One Falcon feeling a bit of pain though is Al Green. Green sat out today's training session due to a knee injury.
I tried to take off quicker than what I should have done, and I wasn't really warm that well, and once I did, it just really strained the knee, and it's just put a lot of fluid on it.
Melbourne's lineup boasts the talents of scoring sensation Andrew Gaze, and the Falcons are devising a strategy to try and keep him quiet. One of those expected to play a big role in that plan is Paul Kuiper. Out of the last 5 games, Kuiper has been voted most valuable player 3 times. After a disappointing performance in their last home game, the Falcons are determined to try and give something back to the fans.
Players went out last weekend up to Brisbane and really made a statement to me and to themselves that this team has pride and character also, and we re-established that. So we're practicing well this week in anticipation of doing that now in front of our home crowd.
Friday night's game gets underway at the Newcastle Entertainment Centre at 8 o'clock. The determination to win is typified by Australian champions Nobby's Beach. They're up most mornings before the sun and ready to put in a good couple of hours training before they head off to work.
It's not like riding a bike, you can't just get off and pick it up a year's time.
Not content with doing things the standard way, Nobby's has been at the forefront of developing new techniques and racing styles. However, while it's sometimes spectacular, it can often go wrong, costing the race and some pride.
I've got an appropriate name called Turtle. I've had a few misfortunes over the years, upside down, but that happens, and there's a very fine edge actually when you're competing, and there's a fine edge between rolling and winning a lot of the times. You've got to push yourself and your crew to the limit.
The water may only be a few degrees over 10, but that doesn't seem to slow them down. They know the training will pay off in competition and when it comes to the real thing.
Every rescue we do in competition simulates some sort of rescue we'd have to do in the surf, and you'd find, and statistically, the rubber ducks are doing about 60% of all rescues in Australia today.
This weekend, Caltex is offering $2,000 in prize money and a brand new outboard motor. The motor will be won by one of the competing teams drawn from a hat, giving some of the new clubs to the competition a chance to take home a worthwhile prize. The Caltex outboard will be offered in each of the 3 rounds. This weekend, the first heats are at Wombrall on the Central Coast. 2 weeks later, it's off to Port Macquarie.
From kendo to Nintendo, from samurai to high-rise, the traditional face of Japan is worlds away from its modern image. To help Australians understand Japan, its rich history and its ever-increasing importance in the world, a national conference is being held at the University of Newcastle. Organised by the Japanese Studies Association of Australia, the conference has attracted 300 participants, including Japan's Consul General in Sydney, Masaaki Noguchi. The university's Professor Leith Morton says the interest shown in the 4-day conference reflects the importance with which Australia views its relations with Japan.
The whole of the Commonwealth really has come to realise how important Japan and Southeast Asia is for our economic and also our political future.
Professor Morton says the gathering of so many internationally renowned scholars on Japan also illustrates how Australian universities can help show the rest of the world what the land of the rising sun has to offer.
Not only do we need to educate Australians to Japan, but also I think we're uniquely placed to educate the rest of the world about Japan, because we're developing this cadre, I suppose you could call it, of experts on Japan who are reaching out more and more to the wider community by publishing more and more.
Scott Bevan, NBN News.
With rain predicted until the weekend, organisers of the NIB Games were ecstatic to see the sunshine this morning. More than 700 junior sportsmen and women are in Newcastle, representing 6 academies, including North Coast, Hunter and Northern Inland. Newcomers to this year's Games, Northern Inland in the maroon and white, took to the court at Charlestown this morning for the netball competition. Only one of the many sports featured in the Games, netball, is being played as a round robin. Already a high standard has been set, with teams from the Hunter and Illawarra setting the pace. Umpires are enjoying the matches as much as the girls, with strong, clean play making their jobs much easier. The NIB Games continue until Sunday.
How do you feel about eating our national emblem? It's estimated there are between 30 and 50 million roos in Australia, and a tiny percentage of those are ending up on the dinner table.
Not unlike venison, I guess a little bit stronger in flavour than beef, somewhere between beef and venison.
It became legal to sell roo meat in South Australia about 10 years ago. Every state has since followed suit except Victoria. The New South Wales Parliament passed legislation late last year. But due to strict health regulations, only in the last month has a Sydney company started to process and distribute the meat. Today at Carrington House in Newcastle, restaurant owners, butchers and supermarket representatives had a taste, from pies to pizzas. The meat has low levels of fat and high levels of protein. Prices rate with beef.
Yes, I imagine that your primal cuts are going to be costing around $16, $17 a kilo for your fillets and your strip loins, so that's your highest quality cut for pan fry work. Your mince and your manufacturing meat, for example, your goulash dice, you're probably going to be paying around $5, $6 a kilo.
The meat is being sold primarily in Sydney and now in the Hunter. Roo promoters say it will soon become a part of our everyday diet. There was a captive test market in Maitland and Cessnock today. It was on the menu in the jails. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
These are just some of the entries received in the competition, interest from school children to professionals. And the winner, this entry from Sirianto Tirabadi of West Wallsend. Sirianto is a final year graphic design student at Newcastle University. His design forms the basis of the airport's new logo.
It incorporates a unique Australian flying object, I suppose, in terms of the boomerang. And secondly, the colours that we've chosen to develop the concept, the rich browns of the Hunter Valley and the resources that represents to the area, and the blues of Port Stephens, and we think that's very appropriate.
Some good news tonight. Power forward Simon O'Donnell is fit after 3 weeks out and will play against the Melbourne Tigers. Everyone is talking about Big Paul Kuiper. He's been making a monkey out of the opposition, voted NBL Most Valuable Player in 3 of his last 4 outings. But the Tigers should be tough to crack with some class players.
They got so much talent in Bradkey and Simmons and Copeland and Whitehead comes in. They're all scoring threats.
And that's not to mention Andrew Gaze. The last clash between the two teams was a boil-over, the Falcons scraping home 132 to 124. They'll be hoping to repeat that performance tomorrow night.
Almost a year after inspecting the old railway yards that are to become the centre of the Honeysuckle redevelopment, Planning Minister Robert Webster was back today to open the first of 6 heritage buildings to be restored. While politicians were planting a tree to commemorate the $575,000 restoration, a new controversy was growing surrounding Newcastle builders and state government contracts. Newcastle's Building Trades Group says a site allowance agreement it struck with local firms has meant the government won't consider them for contracts, including honeysuckle work. The reason? The agreement falls outside a code of practice set up by the government after last year's Building Industry Royal Commission. The union says that amounts to a government ban against Newcastle builders.
Well, that's nonsense, because the only people who'll be putting a ban on Newcastle builders are the unions themselves if they don't accept the fact that agreements that were reached in the past are no longer appropriate, and that Newcastle, like every other part of New South Wales, is expected to be bound by this code of practice.
Robert Fuller from the Newcastle Master Builders Association won't comment on the issue, but it's believed after consultation with the state government, the NBA is looking at pulling out of the agreement.
The government has come up to Newcastle, it came to the Master Builders Association, and it heavily pressed on them that they would not get government contracts unless they agreed with the Code of Conduct and the Industrial Relations Act.
But Mr Webster is confident if negotiations are entered into, a solution for Newcastle builders to tender for government contracts could be found.
These are the billboards Councillor Margaret Gumas objects to, one at the western end of Hunter Street in the city and the other in Broadmeadow. They're the work of 22-year-old Newcastle arts graduate Nicole Hands. The $6,000 billboards have been paid for through a National Women's Grant Program. Nicole applied and was successful. So what are you hoping to achieve by the 2 billboards?
Well, to create an awareness in the community about the violence against women. It's on the increase, and I felt as a woman this was an urgent issue to address.
But Councillor Gumas says they're confusing.
I'm sure people will be spending a lot of time working out what it actually means. That's the one that says we will no longer take the guilt and the shame. And I think that people will be wondering what that one's all about. So that's why I say that maybe the money could have been spent in a different way.
Councillor Gumas believes the $6,000 could have gone into keeping open Mallison House, a refuge for pregnant teenagers which closed last week. But Nicole disagrees.
Increase in violence against women is just something needs to be said about it. You can't just sit back and say nothing, and then when someone does say something about it, she goes against it. I think her comments were against women.
In no way am I criticising the fact that Nicole Hands is trying to support and make aware the problems of rape within the community. I'm certainly very sympathetic towards the boards. Will actually get the message across.
The irony is, though, that Councillor Gumas hasn't even seen the posters she's criticising. She's only heard about them.
Armidale's Mayor Rosemary Leach made the announcement today. The Chinese city of Yanji has invited a delegation from Armidale to have a look at their city.
It's a very exciting prospect for all of us, and they are very anxious to form a sister city relationship with Armidale, with obvious advantages for both of us.
In June, a group from Yanji visited Armidale. The two cities apparently have a fair bit in common in terms of climate and agricultural produce. The Mayor believes it would be a fruitful sister city relationship.
They're looking at genetic engineering of their cattle, improving their breed stocks. They're also very interested in technology of all kinds, and I imagine that there'll be a lot of interchange of technical information. Fascinated with the education system in this country, and I can see great advantages for our local school children and students and the schools here.
The Armidale delegation will visit China in September.
More than 50 Aborigines marched to mark the start of Aboriginal Week festivities in Newcastle. The group began with a blessing and flag-raising ceremony at Christchurch Cathedral. Once at Civic Park, this was repeated with the Lord Mayor John McNaughton in attendance. This event is of great importance to the Aboriginal community.
It's uniting us as people, and that's what it represents here, but it's also creating awareness for the non-Aboriginal people in coming together during the Year of Indigenous People.
The group marched back to the Aboriginal Youth Centre in Wickham for a barbecue. Celebrations will continue throughout the week. Catherine Lamond, NBN News. The elderly owners of this 2nd Avenue Rutherford house had a scare early this morning when a fire broke out in the lounge room after a heater ignited. That room and the front bedroom were destroyed. The rest of the house was severely heat and smoke damaged. The overcome by smoke and treated at Maitland Hospital for minor burns. Her husband was out at the time of the blaze. Other fire victims haven't been as lucky as the Rutherford couple.
Normal 12-monthly statistics prior to the last 6 months have been around about 27 annually. In the last 6 months there's been 20.
In the past 6 weeks, 13 people have been killed in fires throughout the state. One of these was 62-year-old Elaine Roberts, who died after a blaze broke out in her Gorican home. The believed cause, a heater tipped over in the lounge room. Mr Craig believes there is a link between fire fatalities and tough economic times, these leading people to defer repairs on appliances or take risks.
People obviously, because of the economic conditions, are not paying their bills and therefore have got to look at alternative heating sources. People are using candles, they're using 44-gallon drums with heat beads.
Mr Craig has urged people to be more vigilant with appliance repairs and aware of the potential dangers of using candles.